Yo, gentlemen's game back. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever met or known someone who just managed to make you feel good? Like just their presence alone would fill the people around them with pleasure and comfort? People like that, who seem to understand your spirit, feel your pain, adapt to your moods, and make you feel better about yourself, is what Robert Greene categorizes as the 7th type of seducer in his Art of Seduction book, The Charmer. By the way, if you haven't seen the rest of the Art of Seduction series yet, check that out here. So, what are common characteristics of charmers, and what are some specific strategies you can use to charm anyone? The word charm comes from the Latin root carmen, which means song, but also implies like the casting of a magical spell, which makes sense. You see, when you successfully charm someone, it really is like them falling under a spell. Charmers are able to hold their target's attention and fascinate them. They never argue or complain. Instead, they draw others in, making people emotionally dependent. Charmers do this by catering to a person's ego, their self-esteem. There's a quote somewhere that reads, "Talk to a man about himself and he will listen for hours." The charmer doesn't go overboard with this, however, since that would be too obvious. He's more like a beam of light that doesn't shine directly on someone, but throws a pleasant little glow over them. So here are 3 specific strategies you can use to tap into your inner charmer and seduce almost anyone or any girl. So number 1 is to be a source of pleasure by making her the center of attention. Guys who have lots of charm know how to deflect attention away from themselves and focus it on others instead. They're good listeners and observers. They let their targets talk, revealing more about themselves in the process. And as charmers find out more about their strengths and their weaknesses, they individualize their attention to appeal to that specific person's desires and needs. A charmer listens to someone's complaints, but more importantly, distracts them from their problems by giving pleasure. He knows that being energetic, lighthearted, and fun is always more charming than being serious or critical. The charmer tailors his compliments to the person's insecurities. He adapts to their spirit and empathizes with their woes to make them feel bigger and better, and validating their sense of self-worth. He makes them feel like the star of the show. An example of a charmer who mastered this ability to make others into the center of attention was Benjamin Disraeli, who became Prime Minister of England in 1874. At the time, Queen Victoria was depressed and withdrawn, having lost her husband a few years ago. Everyone around her made her feel like she was either too inexperienced or uneducated to do anything without her husband's advice, plus politics bored her to death. As tradition demanded, after coming into power as the Prime Minister, Disraeli came to the palace for a private meeting with the Queen. Benjamin Disraeli didn't have the typical look of a Prime Minister. He was Jewish, had dark skin, and was pretty exotic looking by English standards. He had written a few popular romantic novels as well. The Queen, on the other hand, was formal and simple in her dressing style. Disraeli was advised to curb his natural elegance, but instead he did the exact opposite. He appeared before her almost like a prince, falling to one knee, taking her hand and kissing it. He pledged that his job now was to realize Queen Victoria's dreams. He praised her qualities so much that she ended up blushing. And yet, she didn't find any of this behavior to be offensive. Instead, she was smiling afterwards. Maybe I should give this strange man a chance, she thought. Soon, he began sending her reports on policy issues, parliament debates, etc. He wrote the reports in such an informal, flowery language, addressing her as Fairy Queen, for example, that Victoria was enchanted. She read his reports voraciously, and her interest in politics grew again. Disraeli would send her his novels as a gift, and when she presented him with a book she had written, he started tossing out the phrase, "we authors," to describe him and her. This would make Queen Victoria beam with pride. She would overhear him praising her ideas and her feminine instincts to others, comparing her to the great Elizabeth I. He rarely disagreed with her. In fact, he would ask her for advice during meetings with other ministers. He slowly built up her confidence. Eventually, she had grown so dependent on those positive feelings he gave her that she elevated his rank to Earl of Beaconsfield, which was his lifelong dream. You see, Benjamin could sense deep down that Queen Victoria was warm, affectionate, even sexual, instead of the cold, sober exterior she portrayed. He flattered her ego, making her feel desirable and intelligent, making her the center of attention. And that is the key to charm, really, feeding what's been repressed or denied. By indulging the Queen, Disraeli made himself a source of pleasure. Indulgence is a powerful tool of seduction because it's hard to be angry or defensive with someone who seems to agree with your opinions and tastes. Number 2. Lulling them into ease and comfort. Charm is almost like a hypnotist's trick where he swings a watch in front of your eyes. The more relaxed someone is, the easier it is to charm them. The key to making your target feel comfortable is to mirror her, adapting to her moods. People are naturally narcissistic. They're drawn to those who are most similar to themselves. If you seem to share her values and tastes, to understand their spirit, they'll fall under your spell and your charm. For example, let's say you're an outsider traveling to a different country and you meet a girl. If you go out of your way to show her that you share her values, maybe you learn their language, engage in their customs, it's immensely charming because this preference is a choice, not something you were born into. I actually have a story from a few years back of me having to charm my way out of a situation by making them feel comfortable. I was backpacking in a foreign country in Asia after having just quit my first job out of school. It was always a dream of mine to solo travel, and I was finally doing it. Another thing on my bucket list that I never got a chance to do was to ride a motorbike at top speed along like a roadside of a mountain. So the first thing I did after getting off the 4-hour bus ride arriving to my hotel was to rent a motorbike from the local rental shop. It took me a day practicing learning how to ride the motorized scooter before I felt confident enough to take it for a spin around the village and eventually the nearest mountain. Things were going great. I was having so much fun, wind blasting through my visor, and then boom, I was struck from behind by another local on a motorbike. I immediately fell off my bike, twisting my ankle. Apparently, I wasn't following the rules of the road and switched lanes when it wasn't right to do so. Fortunately, she wasn't going at top speed, so I didn't suffer any life-threatening injuries. What did suck, however, was that the local lady started yelling at me in the middle of the road. Her bike had small chip damage, and she demanded I pay for her repairs or she'd call the police. I knew this was kind of a scam cause there's no way the small damage I caused equaled the outrageous sum she was demanding. So I started complimenting the woman on her bike driving skills. I told her if she had accelerated even faster into the crash, I could have been seriously injured. I thanked her in her native language. I also offered to buy her the most well-known national dish for dinner at the fancy local seafood restaurant. I said sorry too in her language, and kind of exaggerated the pain in my twisted ankle to get some sympathy points. She eventually accepted the equivalent of $17 USD as a payment for her troubles, which was a fraction of what she was asking for before. And she even did me the favor of driving me to the local hospital where I could get my ankle wrapped and get a crutch to use temporarily. She went from an angry screecher to an understanding sweetheart in less than 2 minutes. Looking back on it, I realized that I made her feel comfortable by paying her respect. I charmed my way out of the situation by making the lady feel sorry for my injury even, by showing a bit of humility and for praising her driving skills and apologizing for switching lanes wrong. I didn't argue back with her, or did I let my anger get the best of me. I was completely non-threatening, letting her keep her dignity, which softened her up. I lulled her into ease and comfort. Number 3. Staying calm in the face of adversity. Charming people never seem too emotionally flustered about anything. They always seem to exude this calm, centered energy. You see, when there's adversity and setbacks, that's actually the perfect setting for charm. Showing a calm, unbothered exterior in the face of difficulties puts people at ease. You seem like a patient, competent person, almost like you're waiting for destiny to deal you a better hand, or as if you were confident you could solve the issue yourself. Never show anger, of course, ill temper, or vengefulness. All those disruptive emotions will make people defensive. When you're trying to charm a large group, welcome adversity as a chance to show how charming poise can be. Never whine, never complain, and never try to justify yourself in a sticky situation. You can let other people get flustered or upset. The contrast to your calmness and poise will work to your favor. 2 years ago, I was out in Florida for a vacation with a girl I was dating at the time, who we'll call B. We decided to go hiking in the woods carrying some gear, but we quickly became lost once we ventured off the trail. We were by ourselves, there was no cell phone signal, and to make things worse, we even forgot to bring the map from the trunk of the car. B quickly began to panic. She was one of those anxious types that really didn't handle situations like that well, where things weren't certain. It was getting darker and she was really starting to freak out, saying stuff like, "Oh my god, what are we gonna do?" I knew I had to be the rational one, so I just backtracked using some visual markers that I memorized. I kept assuring her the whole time, telling her, "Yo, it's all good, don't worry. We'll be fine. We didn't even venture in that deep. We're not far away from someone. I know where I'm going." And stuff like that. Eventually, we bumped into a group of people who kindly pointed us toward the main trail. We safely arrived to the exit and everything was fine. And for the rest of the trip, B acted super affectionate towards me. I could tell she really appreciated the way I stayed calm throughout the whole ordeal and never freaked out or gotten angry or defensive. She said it was one of the most charming things about me, that I quote unquote always seemed to know what to do. Even though this wasn't the case, I just made her feel that way with my relaxed demeanor. So to summarize, today we talked about the 7th type of seducer in Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction. We also discussed 3 specific strategies you can use to instantly be more charming around anyone and any girl, which are number 1, being a source of pleasure by making her the center of attention, number 2, lulling them into ease and comfort, and number 3, staying calm in the face of adversity. That's it for the video, and as always, if you want my free 5-page PDF or want to follow me on Instagram, check the links in the description box below. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Next week I have a great video planned for you guys on texting and online games, so make sure to subscribe, and as always, peace.